The door slammed with a finality that rattled more than just the hinges. It rattled her very place in the world. Her sister's voice, sharp with disdain, lingered in the air. "You'll never be enough. Stop embarrassing yourself." For a moment, humiliation washed over her like ice water, but it didn't linger as despair. Instead, something colder took its place. That cruel dismissal became the strike of flint against stone, sparking a quiet fire that would not die. She did not weep. She did not shout. She simply stood still, her resolve forming in silence. From that moment on, she wore smiles like armor. To everyone else, she looked unshaken, even gracious. To her sister, she looked defeated, exactly as intended. But beneath the calm mask, her thoughts sharpened with every passing day. She watched the way her sister carried herself, the way her arrogance grew unchecked. Every smirk, every patronizing pat on the shoulder, every sly remark served as a reminder that patience was her greatest weapon. Anger would betray her. Stillness would keep her invisible. And invisibility was her strongest position. Cracks soon began to appear in the facade her sister had built. Conversations cut short when she entered the room, whispers behind doors, hurried glances exchanged between her sister and those who once called her friend. She replayed old memories with new clarity. The stolen ideas, the backhanded compliments, the subtle sabotage that she had once dismissed as coincidence. Now it was clear. Her sister had been weaving lies for years, and she had played the fool too willingly. But fools who learn quickly become dangerous, and she was learning fast. So she made herself smaller, quieter, the very picture of submission. Her sister believed she had won, and that belief was her first mistake. Every insult, every manipulation was tucked away, each one a thread in the growing tapestry of evidence. She endured, nodding when mocked, agreeing when dismissed, all the while gathering proof of just how deep the betrayal ran. What seemed like weakness was, in truth, calculation. The silence she offered was not surrender. It was strategy. The arrogance came swiftly after. Emboldened by the illusion of superiority, her sister grew careless. She spoke too freely, boasted too loudly, and in her overconfidence, revealed vulnerabilities she thought no one noticed. She dismissed allies she once needed, alienated those who might have protected her. Pride had blinded her, and pride would be the rope that tightened around her neck. All the protagonist had to do was wait, watching as the trap set itself through her sister's own recklessness. The waiting ended with a single, precise move. A letter slipped to the right hands, a whisper placed where it mattered, a truth revealed at the moment her sister least expected it. Suddenly the balance shifted. The same rooms where her sister once smirked now turned cold and judgmental. The allies she thought loyal stepped away, eyes averted. The confidence that had once been her crown crumbled into ash as she realized control was no longer hers. By the time she understood, it was too late. Every lie she had spun was untangled, every manipulation laid bare. The throne she had built on deceit splintered beneath her, and in the collapse, she saw the truth she could never accept, that she had been outplayed by the sister she had underestimated. No shouting match, no grand confrontation, just the undeniable sting of her own downfall, orchestrated with precision she never saw coming. And when it was over, there were no triumphant declarations, no gloating. Only silence. The protagonist walked away without looking back, her victory quiet but absolute. She didn't need applause or recognition. She didn't need her sister's acknowledgement. Her success, her calm, her strength, those were the sweetest revenge of all. What was once a wound had become her crown, and the one who had tried to break her was left to drown in the ruin of her own making. The house had walls that held more than family portraits. They held comparisons, whispered judgments, and the heavy silence of favoritism. To anyone looking in, it seemed perfect, a home full of warmth and laughter. But to her, it had never been a place of belonging. Each gesture of affection tilted toward her sister, each opportunity handed with ease, while she was left with scraps dressed up as fairness. Rivalry simmered in that imbalance, not in loud confrontations, but in the unspoken truth that she was always measured, always found lacking beside the favored daughter. Two sisters, raised under the same roof, yet living in worlds apart. Her sister wore entitlement as naturally as breathing, demanding without asking, receiving without effort. She, on the other hand, learned the art of restraint. Where her sister thrived on noise and attention, she thrived on silence, on observation. And in that silence, she became something her sister never suspected, a strategist. Outwardly, she accepted the hierarchy, but inwardly she was already tallying the scores, learning where arrogance left cracks, where manipulation left trails. Those cracks were nothing new. The echoes of old betrayals whispered to her whenever she recalled childhood games rigged against her, secrets spilled to embarrass her, allies stolen by her sister's charm. Each memory, once brushed aside as pettiness, now revealed itself as part of a pattern. It wasn't just a sibling rivalry. It was a slow erosion, a steady attempt to reduce her to nothing. The cruelty had always been there, disguised as jokes or accidents, but she had grown wise enough to see them clearly now. And seeing them made her patient in ways her sister would never understand. The moment came when opportunity struck, and her sister moved with the boldness of someone who had never been challenged. With their parents away, she seized control, rearranging the house to her liking, making declarations as though she were queen. It wasn't enough to command space. She had to conquer it. And for the first time, the protagonist watched her sister act without restraint, exposing her greed in the open. What her sister thought was power was, in truth, overreach, and overreach always left a trail. The clash reached its sharpest edge the day the door slammed shut with a sound that seemed to cut years of tension into something final. Her sister's smirk as she claimed the protagonist's room was more than arrogance. It was a declaration of war. That single act crystallized every old wound, every subtle cruelty, into something sharp and unignorable. For her sister, it was just another victory. For her, it was the last straw, the moment that turned simmering rivalry into a vow of reckoning. But no vow showed on her face. She smiled instead, lips curling with a calmness that masked the storm beneath. Inside, humiliation burned like fire, but fire that would be banked, controlled, turned into something useful. To rage openly would be to lose. To smile was to sharpen her weapon. And so she smiled, offering no resistance, speaking no word of protest, her silence only deepening her sister's smugness. That smugness was useful. It made the enemy blind. In silence, she began to sow the seeds of her counterattack. Every boast her sister made, every careless insult, every arrogant gesture was noted, tucked away. She knew her sister's patterns now, where she left her guard down, where she trusted too easily in her own charm, where her lies overlapped and tangled. Each detail was another stone in the foundation of something greater. This was not just about reclaiming a room, it was about reclaiming herself, and that required patience, precision, and timing. So when she finally walked out, it wasn't with defeat shadowing her steps. It was with the steady pace of someone setting a plan in motion. Leaving was never surrender, it was positioning. A retreat that gave her vantage, distance, and control. Behind her, the house remained the same. The favored sister still smug, still sure of her dominance. But she no longer cared about appearances. She had chosen her battleground, and it would not be within the suffocating walls of favoritism. Her revenge would not be loud. It would not be rushed. It would be a quiet storm her sister never saw coming, until it was too late to escape. Her sister's crown of arrogance had always shone too brightly, and it was only a matter of time before cracks began to show. Reckless spending, careless words, and an unchecked sense of superiority left her blind to the dangers of overconfidence. She believed herself untouchable, adored and secure, but that very belief exposed the weaknesses that would one day undo her. What she flaunted as strength was, in truth, fragile glass. The protagonist saw it clearly, and in those fractures she recognized opportunity. The present reminded her of the past, and old betrayals rose like shadows to sharpen her focus. She remembered the times her sister had stolen her friends with false charm, the way she had whispered lies that turned allies into strangers. She recalled childhood games where rules shifted conveniently, always leaving her humiliated. Every power play came back with new clarity, no longer dismissed as petty cruelty, but revealed as a pattern of domination. Each memory fueled her resolve, reminding her just how deeply her sister underestimated her. That underestimation would become her sharpest weapon. Unlike her sister, she possessed a mind that never forgot. Every slight, every insult, every boast became data stored and organized. Her sister's careless arrogance became a map of vulnerabilities waiting to be traced. Words once meant to wound were repurposed into evidence. Bragging once meant to belittle became clues to hidden weaknesses. In silence, she built a catalog of every weapon her sister had unknowingly handed her, piece by piece constructing a hunger for payback that was no longer impulsive. It was calculated. She began drawing the blueprint of revenge as if sketching an intricate design. Nothing rushed, nothing careless. Each step laid carefully, not for petty satisfaction, but for complete reclamation of control. She understood the importance of patience. One premature move would ruin everything, so she crafted a plan as methodical as an architect's draft. Timelines, vulnerabilities, allies, outcomes, all aligned with precision. To her sister, she still looked subdued, beaten, compliant. Behind that mask, she was engineering a quiet storm. The silent collection of evidence began with patience and subtlety. She gathered documents that told inconvenient truths, secrets whispered by those her sister had dismissed, and allies who had grown tired of being used and discarded. She stored them carefully, creating a foundation her sister would never suspect. Each detail, each piece of proof, was a nail in the coffin her sister was unknowingly building for herself. By the time the structure was complete, there would be no escape, no way to deny what would be revealed. All the while, her sister paraded her arrogance for the world to see. She flaunted shallow victories as if they were conquests, laughing too loudly, boasting too openly. To her, the protagonist's silence was defeat. To everyone else, her confidence seemed unshakable, but arrogance on parade is nothing more than a mask, and the protagonist knew how thin the mask truly was. Every laugh, every show of dominance only served to make the eventual fall more devastating. 2 games unfolded at once, though only one sister knew it. While the favored daughter basked in her illusions of triumph, the other played a far deadlier, smarter game. Hers was not a game of words, but of outcomes. She did not need to shout or demand. She only needed to wait and move when the moment was right. And while her sister celebrated her supposed superiority, she quietly tightened the net, pulling invisible threads that her sister never noticed until they began to knot around her. The calm before the strike settled in with deceptive stillness. Outwardly, nothing had changed. The boasting, the laughter, the overconfidence. But beneath it, the storm had already gathered, ready to break. Every careless word spoken by her sister was stored away. Every triumphant laugh turned into fuel. The silence she carried was not weakness, but power. The house of cards stood tall, but she knew it only took one precise touch to bring it crashing down. Her sister didn't know it yet, but the end had already begun. Her downfall began not with a scream, but with a crack so small most would have overlooked it. In her reckless pride, she had built walls around herself, walls of lies, manipulation, and false charm. But pride blinds the sharpest mind, and hers was no exception. The sister, who had always gloated over her superiority, made one mistake too large to conceal. It was a miscalculation born from arrogance, a moment where she believed no one would dare question her. To others, it might have looked insignificant, but to the one watching closely, it was the beginning of her end. The arrogance revealed itself in ink. A careless document, hastily signed, flaunted as if untouchable, bore her downfall between its lines. A missed requirement here, a forged signature there, small cracks disguised beneath the flourish of her pen. She believed it made her untouchable, an emblem of her authority, but that overconfidence became the loudest. Confession. It was not a question of if her lie would unravel, only when. She had delivered her own vulnerability in writing, and she had no idea who had taken notice. The eyes that missed nothing had been there all along, silent and unblinking. The protagonist had endured the taunts, the betrayals, and the smugness of her sister's reign with a patience that burned like quiet fire. While others brushed past inconsistencies, she watched. She noticed. And in that document, in the slip of a careless pen, she recognized opportunity clothed in weakness. She said nothing, her lips sealed in composure, but inside, the blueprint of revenge had begun to form. The sister was loud, but she would be undone by silence, and so, the trap was woven without a word. Every detail aligned, every thread stitched in precision. There would be no need for confrontation, no need for fury. Her sister would walk willingly into the snare, believing the path was paved for her triumph. The beauty of it lay in restraint. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. Step by step, the stage was set so that the downfall would not come from an external strike. It would come from her sister's own hand, her own arrogance tightening around her like a rope. The architect of this vengeance remained calm, unmoved by emotion. While others might have trembled with anger or eagerness, she built her plan with patience as her greatest ally. Every move was measured, each detail considered twice before being set into motion. The game was not about striking first, but striking with certainty. When the time came, there would be no loose ends, no room for her sister to wriggle free. Revenge would not be a storm of fury. It would be a quiet, calculated demolition of everything her sister thought untouchable. Meanwhile, the sister basked in blind confidence. She flaunted her victory, parading her supposed triumphs as though they were shields against consequence. Every boast, every careless laugh was another step closer to the edge she could not see. To her, danger was invisible. She believed herself invincible, and so she carried on, oblivious to the fact that the noose had already been knotted, and with each move, she was tightening it herself. Hints of the inevitable whispered through the air. Every misplaced boast, every careless step, carried the weight of what was coming. She laughed too loudly, bragged too easily, and dismissed too quickly. To others, it was confidence. To the one watching, it was the drumbeat of doom. The audience of one needed no satisfaction yet, only patience, for the downfall was now inevitable. Every moment became a rehearsal for the final act she could not imagine approaching. And then came the smile before the storm. She believed herself untouchable, cloaked in the illusion of her own power. But across the room, a quiet smile formed, calm and knowing. The protagonist did not gloat, did not rush, did not tremble. She smiled because she understood what her sister did not, that pride's first misstep is always the last. The storm was already here, waiting for the right second to break. And when it did, there would be no escape, no plea, no redemption. Only silence, precision, and justice long overdue. The first move came without fanfare. She did not storm in with accusations or threats. She simply began. Each action was precise, calculated, a quiet adjustment of pieces that would eventually become the decisive move. She did not reveal her hand. She only nudged events along, letting the mechanisms she had patiently arranged begin to turn. Every step was deliberate, measured, and invisible to the eyes of her sister, who remained arrogantly convinced that nothing could touch her. Documents once dismissed as trivial were now instruments of power. Loopholes discovered through careful study, letters that exposed hidden truths, and secrets whispered in confidence became weapons. Each one was deployed with the subtlety of a scalpel, cutting through layers of lies and facades her sister had relied upon. What once seemed insignificant now carried the weight of consequence. Each piece meticulously aimed to dismantle the carefully constructed image of superiority. The maneuvers led naturally to a victory etched in law and structure. Legal claims, contractual rights, and strategic applications left the sister cornered with no avenues for escape. Her every attempt to assert control was met with preemptive moves that had been anticipated long before she even thought of them. The system itself, once manipulated by her sister's arrogance, now served as the stage for her downfall, and every legal and strategic step advanced her toward the inevitable conclusion. Then came the moment of realization, that split second when the truth broke through the veil of confidence. Shock spread across her sister's face, eyes widening as the magnitude of her defeat became clear. For the first time, the facade of control cracked, and she saw the consequences of underestimating the one she had mocked, dismissed, and tried to suppress. Every smug expression and boastful claim returned to her like a mirror of humiliation, reflecting the cunning she had failed to anticipate. Panic followed, clumsily disguised behind the remnants of a smirk. Her arrogance, once impenetrable, collapsed under the weight of exposure. Every excuse she attempted only dug the hole deeper. Every plea, every rationalization a confirmation of her earlier hubris. Her own strategies, hastily built on overconfidence, became chains she could not break. The more she resisted, the more she revealed, until there was nothing left but the raw truth of her defeat. Through it all, the protagonist remained calm, an island of composure amid the chaos. No tremor of triumph betrayed her, no harsh words shattered the tense air. She moved with deliberate patience, allowing the events she had orchestrated to unfold naturally, untouched by the flurry of desperation around her. Her presence alone reminded everyone that the true power had always lain quietly in her hands, unseen until the perfect moment. Revenge needed no fury, no violent outburst, no dramatic confrontation. It needed only intelligence, patience, and precision. Each calculated move struck deeper than anger ever could, leaving nothing for her sister to challenge or undo. The payoff was silent but undeniable, and it required no explanation or theatrics. The work of revenge was complete in its elegance and inevitability, a flawless execution born of restraint and foresight. Finally came the decisive blow, simple in appearance yet devastating in effect. The house, once seized in arrogance and entitlement, returned to its rightful keeper, not through force, but because her sister had delivered it herself, unknowingly, with every action and misstep she had made. The tables had turned completely, the victory absolute, and the protagonist walked away with quiet certainty, knowing that true justice had been served. She had claimed not just the house, but the triumph of patience, strategy, and unshakable intellect. And in that calm, absolute reclaiming of what was hers, there was no need for gloating, only the enduring satisfaction of a plan executed to perfection. The moment came quietly, yet it carried the force of years of careful observation and silent preparation. Her sister's arrogance, once a shield she wielded so effortlessly, began to crack under scrutiny, revealing vulnerabilities that had always existed but gone unnoticed. Each misstep, each boast, each careless glance was now magnified by the relentless precision of the plan already in motion. Public exposure and undeniable evidence converged, and the house of cards her sister had built began to collapse, leaving her staggering under the weight of her own overconfidence. Amid the chaos, the protagonist remained calm, a still center in the storm. Her patience, her meticulous planning, and her quiet vigilance had secured a victory that required no theatrics or outbursts. Every move she had made, every piece of information gathered, every subtle maneuver executed, culminated in this moment of absolute control. She stood composed, knowing that the power she had reclaimed was not simply about the house, or the victory itself, but about the certainty that strategy had triumphed over arrogance. The consequences of overconfidence became undeniable. Every reckless boast, every dismissive remark from her sister returned like a boomerang, punishing the one who had once believed herself untouchable. Karma, patient and impartial, moved through the carefully laid groundwork, ensuring that no escape or excuse could mitigate the impact. The sister's own hand had delivered the defeat, a lesson embedded in every exposure of error and every miscalculated step. Yet the protagonist did not gloat. Triumph was measured not in loud proclamations or revenge-fueled anger, but in the quiet satisfaction of foresight and composure. The enemy's downfall was complete, but the victory was carried with dignity, a testament to intelligence and restraint. There was no need for theatrics. The unraveling itself was punishment enough, and every observer, if there were any, could witness the precise orchestration of justice without a single shout. In the aftermath, the protagonist reflected silently on the events that had unfolded. Lessons written in shadows revealed themselves clearly. Patience, observation, and strategic thinking were sharper and more effective than any fleeting burst of emotion. Every subtle detail once recorded in her mind had contributed to this outcome, proving that the sharpest weapons were those wielded with intelligence rather than impulse. With the path cleared and the adversary defeated, peace settled naturally over her life. The manipulations, the overbearing presence, and the quiet threats that had once shadowed her days were gone. A new chapter awaited, free from the burdens imposed by her sister's ambition and deceit. The protagonist moved forward with steady confidence, the satisfaction of a plan fulfilled balanced by the serenity of a future now unburdened. And in that quiet, deliberate conclusion, she understood the ultimate truth of revenge. It was never about anger or retaliation, but about patience, calculation, and allowing those who underestimated you to engineer their own downfall. Revenge isn't about anger. It's about patience, strategy, and letting your enemies destroy themselves, she thought, a final acknowledgement that intelligence and foresight had won where raw emotion could never prevail.